Absolutely nothing beats windshield time. Welcome back to Dan the Road Trip Guy, a podcast where we have candid conversations about life lessons learned on the road. I'm your host, Bimmer enthusiast and road trip extraordinaire, Dan Neal. And now, on to the show. Today's episode, my guest is Gary Faules, and Gary and I have never met. We don't know one another. We connected on LinkedIn, and I connected with Gary because his background just looked so interesting to me, and that's who I like to talk to. It's just folks with stories. Gary, if you read it, he's a Olympic skeet shooter. He's a race car guy. He's a car guy. He's an author. He has a book, and I'm reading it right now. Book is Treasures We Can't Keep, and other short stories, and I am just thoroughly enjoying it because I love short stories. And now he's in Santa Fe, and I believe being an artist. He's done a lot in his years, and I'm excited to talk to him. So welcome to the show, Gary.
Well, it's nice to be here, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it'll be a pleasure. Thank you. I'd like to give my guests just a couple minutes, and I know I told a little bit about you, but take a couple minutes and just tell my listeners, who is Gary Faules?
Well, gosh, I've been very fortunate to have enjoyed a lot of different things in life. As you mentioned, I was an Olympic skeet shooter. I set the current world record in Monacatina Terme, Italy in 1982. We boycotted the Olympic Games in 80, but won numerous world championships, Benito Juarez Games, Pan Am Games, etc. So that was a lot of excitement in my life. I went on to race cars, besides winning the world-famous La Carrera Panamericana, which ironically, my best man, Herschel McGriff, won it the first year it was run in 1950. He was best man at our wedding. I was fortunate to be the presenter at this year's NASCAR Hall of Fame induction, where he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. That was pretty exciting.
Oh, wow.
I've done a few other things. My racing career, I am now the National Mentor Director for NASA. That's the National Auto Sports Association. And I've won season championships. I was the first driver to win the Timex 12 Hours of Thunderhill 3 years in a row. And I won the Timex Endurance Season Championships. Then I went on to be the first driver, team owner to win the United States Air Force 25 Hours of Thunderhill 3 years in a row. I won the Mexican Grand Prix in 1999. Just enjoyed a lot of racing. That's been taken up a lot of time. I recently retired as the executive director for the Unser Racing Museum after Mrs. Unser insisted that I go back to work after 7 years happy retirement. So,
And you had your own business in California, is that correct?
Yes, I was CEO of one of the larger auto repair facilities in California. I maintained some wonderful relationships with most of the larger electronics companies in Silicon Valley.
All that, I'm in the story right now in your book. You had an accident when you were a young lad and lost your vision for a period. And I haven't finished that story yet, so I don't know the outcome, but went on to achieve all this after that.
Yeah, that was, I referred to that as my dark years, which was quite excitement. Actually, I milked it for all it was worth. The doctors said I would never see again, and my sisters had a strange sense of humor. They used to move the coffee table after I'd get used to knowing where it was, so my shins took their toll. But other than that, it was life-changing.
Yeah, well, I certainly look forward to finishing that story, and I'm certainly glad you got your vision back for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So one question I like to ask, and particularly of guys our age, they always have pretty good stories of, particularly since you're in the car world. What was your first car?
You know, it's funny that you should ask this. I'm also a columnist for Speed News magazine. This month, my column is about my first car and an experience in it. I had a 1959 Chevy Impala, 409 109 4-speed, 411 rear-end gears. It was a pretty hot setup for its time. So along came the first Saturday night, and headed to town to cruise the gut with my buddies. And I was from a small town in Oregon. There was only one cop in town, so if you saw him going one direction, you knew that the road was open going the other direction. So one of my buddies says, "Hey, I bet nobody's ever done 100 miles an hour in town." And it sounded like a challenge to me.
Yeah, for sure.
We took off like a bat out of hell and was headed up the hill, and wouldn't you know it, well, we broke the record of being the first to drive 100 miles an hour in town. But unfortunately, it was one of those very rare occasions when an Oregon State Police just happened to be in town. So my first ticket was for doing over 100 in a 35. And so that's in this month's column. A good friend of mine is a famous artist from Oregon. The other night we were talking, and her son got his first ticket for doing over 100.
Okay, good shared story. Racing came into your blood at an early age then, sounds like, right?
Oh, absolutely. Before that, it was go-karts and bikes, of course, like everybody else, and cars, led on to a career. In Oregon, we didn't have a Major League Baseball team. Growing up, we didn't have, a NFL football team. So I grew up idolizing race car drivers. So I had Herschel McGriff, famous Oregonian, the oldest living, still active NASCAR driver at the age of 95. I hand painted on my go-kart when I was like 10 years old, the McGriff Special. And I didn't even know until 2009 when Herschel and his wife and I were having dinner in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, that he was friends with my father. They were both in the lumber business, and I never had a clue that my dad and him knew one another.
Oh, wow. Good story. That car, I'm assuming you've had a lot of cars over the years. Is there a favorite car that sticks out in your mind, and maybe one of those you said, wow, I wish I'd hung on to that car?
Well, there's been some really special cars. I was fortunate to be very good friends with Carroll Shelby. So I had several Shelbys in my life, and one of which I drove when I won the La Carrera Panamericana. And then I had a 68 that Carroll built for me. It was the only 68 GT500 ever built with a 427 NASCAR engine in it. But one of my favorite vehicles that I had that I really wished I had never sold was my 1937 Ford pickup. On my parents' ranch when I was a kid, out in the trees, I found this 37 Ford pickup in the heavy brush, and there was actually trees growing up through the floorboard and out through the windows. And I had to literally log a trail and cut all that stuff down in order to drag it back up to the shop with my dad's tractor. And I put a 396 Olds V8 in it with a Chevy 4-speed and a Pontiac GTO rear end, and that was a hot little setup, I'll tell you.
Oh, that sounds fun. Wow. Yeah, we still have my dad restored a 1946 Chevy pickup. And so my brother and I still have that. And
I have my mom and dad's 1928 Model A. It's I'm in the process of restoring it. Dad bought it when it had 550 miles on it and restored it. And they had it in a lot of parades and shows and stuff over the years. And so the memories are really wonderful memories for me of that car.
Oh, wow. Did you, as a family or even in later life, I like to ask a question since I'm the road trip guy, I guess. I love road trips. Any epic road trips in your life? You've been around the world, epic road trips in your life that just stand out and it was just really special?
Yeah, there's been a lot of great road trips. One of them that comes to mind was in 1970. I took my brother and two friends in my motorhome, and we drove from San Francisco to the tip of Baja. Now, you have to remember this was long before there were any real roads in Mexico. It was an exciting adventure, and almost nobody spoke English back then when you were that far south of Ensenada. That was quite an adventure, I'll tell you. It's changed a lot now. I've been many times. Most of the time we fly, of course, but that was quite a trip.
Yeah, that sounds fun. You grew up in Oregon, but then somehow you made your way south to California, and you got in the car business. How'd you get in the car business, repair business?
Well, as a kid going to high school, I was a runt. I was just a small guy, and so I wasn't big enough to play with the football guys and stuff. So I was like a football manager.
Okay.
And baseball and stuff. So, but I really had an affair with cars. So after school and after baseball practice, I'd work in a Texaco gas station. I'd sit there and do my homework at night in between the bells ringing. Just my first accident was on the Rogue River, driving along and ended up going off the road a little too fast, and I rolled 375 yards down a cliff. These loggers, fortunately, happened to see my taillights go off the road and came to my rescue, and I was trapped inside the car, crushed between the two padded seats, ironically. I didn't have a bruise on me, and they were yelling at me, "Are you okay?" And I go, "Yeah, but how bad's my car? Is my dad going to notice?" And they started laughing. And when I got out of the car, another 20 feet, and I'd have rolled off the deep end of cliff into the Rogue River. So that was just somebody's always been looking after me.
Yeah, sounds like it for sure. You made down to, did you immediately go into business for yourself, or did you work for someone else, or how'd that come to be?
Well, I went down to California, and I started going to Stanford University, and my parents and my in-laws helped me get through school. I wasn't the brightest bulb in the room, but I managed to do okay, and I really had a great time with my professors. But my parents said, this isn't going to be a free ride for you. Get a job. I worked as a mechanic. I enjoyed that, and one thing led to another, and I found out that I was pretty good at what I did, and I was great with my customers, and just loved it. I was passionate about the business, and one thing led to another, and I wound up, like I said, had one of the larger auto repair facilities in the state of California.
Wow. Did you finish up at Stanford?
Oh, yeah. I graduated in 75.
75. And I believe your listing said you had a creative writing degree, or?
That's correct. Yeah, mechanical engineering.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. So after school, did you just immediately open up a shop, or did you work?
I was actually opening up my shop before I finished graduating.
Oh, that's fun. Did you work on a particular type of car, or?
I had three divisions in my corporation. One was retail, taking care of, everyday cars. I had a racing division called California's Best, and I had my specialty was maintaining fleets for large electronics companies like Apple, AMD, Signetics, Facebook, National Semiconductor, you name it. I took care of all of the big kids in Silicon Valley.
Wow.
That was very lucrative for me.
Yeah, I bet. Sounds like it.
Yeah. No, I one time had multiple service stations. I had mobile stations, which was very good for me. But I learned that focusing on doing something really good at one station far exceeded and was a lot more profitable than it was trying to stretch myself out over several others.
I see. Those stations are the ones that I recall from growing up, 2 or 3 bays and some gas pumps out front. Was that what they were like?
That's correct. And but back then, I was always thinking outside the box. So profitable as my service stations were for the repair business, then we added on stores like everybody else did, of course. But I specialized in maintaining or working for car dealerships. Chevy dealerships, Ford, Chrysler, all of them, they had large amounts of used car business. That's where they made their most money. But you take the typical or the average lifetime Chevy mechanic or Ford mechanic, whatever, they didn't know they weren't familiar with Toyotas, for example, or Hondas or whatever. So I would pick up all of their used cars, do what we called S&S, which was smog and safety inspections, let them know what the cars needed and negotiate and get all these cars fixed up for them. And that was a very lucrative business.
You'd done a lot of racing in your day. Is there one particular race that is just very memorable to you?
Yeah, it seems like every race you win is memorable.
Yeah, for sure, right?
Yeah, I was very excited to do so well in the La Carrera Panamericana. You race 2,700 miles all the way from Guatemala back to the United States over 7 days, and it's pretty grueling. It's considered the most dangerous and grueling race in the world. The most exciting stage of that race was winning the Mil Cumbre, which was considered so dangerous that the year after I ran it, they discontinued it. So many men had died and lost their lives in that stage of the race. Yeah, that was very exciting, a lot of fun to build a car that can withstand the beating and the abuse and handle and do all of the things that it needs to do was very rewarding.
Yeah, and what car were you in for that event?
The newest car you were allowed to drive in that race was 65.
Okay.
So I raced my 1965 Shelby GT350R model.
Okay. Wow. And your co-driver?
My co-driver was John Emerson, who was a competitor. John and I raced against one another for years, and we were mortal enemies on the track, and come back into the pits and best friends. He was one of the hardest to race against, and so when it came time to race in La Carrera, I wanted the best there was, and I couldn't think of anybody better suited to race or to navigate for me. And he was really good at it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he really helped. Having a good navigator was a very important tool in that race.
Yeah. I don't know that race real well. Do you stop at night, or this is just straight through 2,700 miles, 7 days nonstop?
No, the federales close the roads and block everything off, with the exception of goats and donkeys and people that haven't heard about the race. And so you never know what you're going to run into. They made a really exciting movie about it, about the La Carrera Panamericana, and they did the entire build of my car from the ground up to going on to each stage of the race. So you race different stages, and you'll come to a point, and then you take off, and you can, if you're fast enough, you can pass other cars that are in front of you day by day, and you accumulate points, and and then of course all the racers stay in the biggest hotels and have awards banquets and stuff each evening as to who did well. It's really well orchestrated.
Oh, wow. That sounds fun. Switch gears a little bit from cars. You are an Olympic skeet shooter. Did you start skeet shooting in Oregon? How did you get involved in skeet shooting?
Well, my father was an avid hunter, but had nothing but the greatest respect for wildlife and game, and taught me a lot of important lessons like, it's not important to fill your fishing creel or get your limit of doves or whatever. What's important is to respect nature and to take care of it. He was really a guy that made sure everybody knew what they were doing and respected everything that was on our ranch and everywhere else. But he was an amazing shot. So I grew up learning from an amazing guy. We used to shoot the tops out of trees on windy days to see who could shoot the top out with the least amount of ammunition while they were swaying in the wind. When I went to California, I began shooting trap, which I wasn't very good at. Started learning, and one thing led to another. And speaking of cars, I actually met my coach, John Satterwhite, the Olympian, who took me under his tutelage and started giving me lessons because he needed my help in getting hot rod parts for a car he was building.
Oh, fun.
A replica of John Masmanian's Willys. So at any rate, one thing led to another, and I wanted to win a club championship, and then a state championship, and then a West Coast championship, and it just never stops. You just always want more. It's very addicting, and I was shooting 6 days a week. I would have shot 7 if the gun club would have been open. A lot of effort, and you learn it's more of a mental game than a physical game. It's training and knowing that you can do this and desire. And
yeah, do you still shoot today?
I'm an instructor at the Los Alamos Gun Club. Yes, and
okay.
My wife is a wonderful shot, and she's learning, and we fish and shoot, and we have a lot of fun. She's very competitive. Matter of fact, while we were in Cuba, I've always been a Hemingway aficionado, and I'm very good friends with his son Patrick. We stayed at the Hemingway Villa and his hotel room where he lived for 8 years in Havana. And my wife beat me. She caught an 84-pound tarpon on a 12-pound tippet fly rod. So we have a lot of fun fishing. We travel a lot fishing.
You had another book, and I'm looking forward to checking it out, but it was I Slept in Africa and Other Stories. So I assume you've been in Africa and have some stories from there. Is there one that you want to share?
Yeah, actually, Africa was an amazing adventure. My father had hunt a lot in Canada as a young man back in the late 40s, early 50s. Mm-hmm. So I grew up with trophies and stuff in the house. So I always wanted to go to Africa. So I wound up going over there and doing really well. And I'm a member of Safari Club International, and we are dedicated to protecting wildlife and game and anti-poaching and so on. I had a very successful safari while I was over there for a month. Yeah, lots to learn over there. The people, the food, the culture, everything. It was just a wonderful time.
Yeah, good. Thanks for sharing that. One question I like to ask is, if you could take a road trip today with anyone, living or deceased, who would it be and where would you go? Maybe even what would you drive if you could pick something to drive?
Great question. One of my idols and a guy I became friends with was President Reagan. And if I could go on a road trip with anybody, either President Reagan or Carol Schultz. While I was in business, I had written Ronald Reagan 6 letters he wrote me, 3 of which are handwritten and 3 are typed. And in one of his letters, he wrote, "I especially liked your offer to go fishing when I return back to California and run for governor again." He said, however, the entourage that necessarily accompanies me wherever I go would scare off the most willing fish. So he said, however, if you get a chance, drop a line in for me. So coincidentally, I happened to be in Canada fishing a month after that, and I was kidding my guide that the President of the United States sent me up here to catch a fish for him. After a few days of fishing, he says, "Hey, Gary, how are we going to know which fish is Ronnie's fish, eh?" And I said, "I'll tell you what, the next fish we catch will be Ronnie's fish." So I just happened to catch this 94-pound king salmon, and they shipped it to me a month later, mounted on a plaque, and a bronze plaque on the side of it said, "Caught by Gary Faules in the Kitimat River, BC, Canada. This one for the Gipper." Ronald Reagan Museum has been after this fish for some time to put in the museum with the letters that led up to it at the Simi Valley Ronald Reagan Museum.
That's really cool. I mean, if I look at your story, you've been a lot of places, you've done a lot of things. Is there anything left on your list that you want to knock off that list? Call it a bucket list if you want. Is there one item in particular, an experience, or somebody to meet?
Absolutely. There are numerous things on my bucket list, but running with the bulls is a must. My wife and I are going to Italy in May, but we want to return and go back to Spain. And like I mentioned, having this love, this passion for all things Hemingway, I would love to run with the bulls.
Yeah, that's great. And then according to the back of the book, I think I read, or maybe you told me, you are now an artist. You're in Santa Fe. You're an artist. What a great town to be an artist in, I guess, right?
Man, that's been amazing. I have never, I can't say wanted to paint. I've always wished that I could, but I never really honestly thought that I had the ability to do it. I've never even tried. Living here in Santa Fe, as you know, there are over 350 high-quality art galleries, and there's just art everywhere. And we love museums and have seen many around the world. And in San Francisco, when I was there, a lot of the great museums, spent a lot of time there. But when I started getting some things framed here in Santa Fe, we have a lot of art. As you go into the stores, you see all these canvases stuff. I'll just hide in the garage and see what I can do. And I don't know. I started producing some stuff that I don't know where this knack came from. I do a lot of, I can't draw faces and stuff like that. I do abstract and modern day stuff. And it started coming out really well. People started buying this stuff. And that was never my original plan. But recently the Linsick Theater here has asked for one of my paintings for an upcoming fundraiser that they're having. 2 different galleries have asked for some of my paintings to be on display. And it's just been very rewarding, relaxing, and fun. And it's just been a great adventure.
Yeah.
Leroy Neiman, a famous artist, was a friend of mine. And I had dinner with him a couple of times in San Francisco. And he would invite me to come down to the Haight-Ashbury development that he started, where kids that can't afford to paint can go there and learn to paint. Everything's paid for. And I was always too embarrassed to go down there and try. In retrospect, I wished I had gone with him.
You might have been painting a long time ago. Well, next time we're in Santa Fe, I'll go into one of the galleries and go, "Hey, I would like a Gary Faules, please."
Well, let's hope that works out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's so much art and culture and great fishing, and we just love it here in Santa Fe. It's the crown jewel of New Mexico.
Yeah. Well, Gary, I really appreciate your time, and I know you don't know me from Adam, but I just really appreciate you taking the time to just talk with me here on a Saturday morning. And I've so enjoyed hearing your stories, and I'm enjoying reading your book.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And, we don't have to say that we don't know one another anymore, do we?
No, we don't. I like to give an opportunity. I know you're writing for a column, so tell people how to find you, your art, your book, whatever you want to share, really.
Well, like I said, I'm have a monthly column that I write for Speed News magazine. That's NASA, NASA, speednews.com. They can look that up online and read my monthly column there.
Okay, that'd be great. And if you're in Santa Fe, you can look for his art. And then you can find his book, Treasures We Can't Keep, and other short stories. That's
available on Amazon.com.
Yeah. Again, I so enjoyed our time together.
Yeah, so did I. This has been fun. And keep it under 100.
Yeah, for sure, right? I'll watch the tickets. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Dan the Road Trip Guy, and we look forward to having you back again next time. In the meantime, if you want to find me, you can find me on the internet at Danny, D-A-N-N-Y, Neal, Neal.com. Until we meet up again, keep having conversations and keep driving.